Ay. I don't know. I don't get it. Don't be so illogical, is my point.
Have my cock. Everyone's just staring now.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Sohum, and I'm on a mission to spread peace, love, and positivity through music. Today, I'll be reacting to Storm by Minchin. A big thank you goes to Rana, whose generous support made this reaction, as well as all of my other Minchin reactions on this channel so far, possible. I think it's been really fun to get to explore Tim, his comedy, his musical prowess, and his fun insights, and really profound insights, should I say. So I'm excited to check this one out as well, guys, and let's just jump in.
I think I can speak for contemporary males. I don't know if you guys agree. You get to that point in your life, like I think mostly in the early 30s for men anyway, where you start to realize,
for context, I'm 27,
that everything you want to say, everything you want to express in your life can't necessarily be expressed in comedy song.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think it's at this point in your average man's life when he might choose to write a 9-minute beat poem.
I'm on that path a little bit. Not with comedy necessarily, but
beat poem.
Music writing. How old is he here? He's 30 something?
It's called Storm.
He's not playing piano this time.
In a North London top floor flat, all white walls, white carpet, white cat, rice paper partitions, modern art and ambition. The host's a physician, bright bloke, has his own practice. His girlfriend's an actress, an old mate of ours from home. And they're always great fun, so to dinner we've come.
Very highbrow
The
area.
fifth guest is an unknown. The hosts have just thrown us together for a favour, because this girl's just arrived from Australia and she's moved to North London and she's a sister of someone or has some connection. As we make introductions, I'm struck by her beauty. She's irrefutably fair with dark eyes and dark hair. But as she sits, I admit...
I love this almost noir-esque backing track he has to his slam poetry. This is slam poetry, right? I couldn't remember what he exactly said when he was introducing the poetry part. I think he said slam. It's like a, what's it called? Pink Panther-esque.
Fair with dark eyes and dark hair. But as she sits, I admit I'm a little bit wary, because I noticed the tip of the wing of a fairy tattooed on that popular area just above the derriere. And when she says, I'm Sagittarian, I confess a pigeonhole starts to form.
One of my favorite jokes is when people talk about zodiac signs and astrology, to ask them whether or not they're an aquarium. If you know, you know.
Sagittarian, I confess a pigeonhole starts to form, and is immediately filled with pigeon when she says her name is Storm. Conversation is initially bright and light-hearted, but it's not long before Storm gets started. You can't know anything. Knowledge is merely opinion. She opines over her Cabernet Sauvignon vis-a-vis some unhippily empirical comment made by me. Not a good start, I think. We're only on pre-dinner drinks, and across the room my wife widens her eyes, silently begs me, be nice. A matrimonial warning not worth ignoring, so I resist the urge to ask Storm whether knowledge is so loose weave of a morning when deciding whether to leave her apartment.
Oh my god, now I kind of got lost in the sauce of listening to the music. I gotta go back a little bit.
A matrimonial warning not worth ignoring, so I resist the urge to ask Storm whether knowledge is so loose weave of a morning when deciding whether to leave her apartment by the front door or the window on her second floor.
Wait, that's really impressive. He was almost rapping those lines to the beat, and then he ended the last syllable of that phrase on the end of the beat of that. Wow, that was cool.
Deciding whether to leave her apartment by the front door or the window on her second floor. The food is delicious, and Storm, whilst avoiding all meat, happily sits and eats as the good doctor slightly pissedly holds court on some anachronistic aspect of medical history when Storm suddenly insists, but the human body is a mystery. Science just falls in a hole when it tries to explain the nature of the soul. My hostess throws me a glance. She, like my wife, knows there's a chance I'll be off on one of my rare but fun rants, but I shan't.
Rare.
My lips are sealed. I just want to enjoy the meal. And although Storm is starting to get my goat, I have no intention of rocking the boat. Although it's becoming a bit of a wrestle because, like her meteorological namesake, Storm has no such concerns for our vessel. Pharmaceutical companies at the end.
He's like throwing in a lot of nice poetry too. It's not just like to recount the story using plain words. He's actually making you think a little bit to get there. I like it.
Storm has no such concerns for our vessel.
I've never heard something like this.
Pharmaceutical companies are the enemy. They promote drug dependency at the cost of the natural remedies that all our bodies need. They are immoral and driven by greed. Why take drugs when herbs can solve it? Why use chemicals when homeopathic solvents can resolve it? I think it's time we all return to live with natural medical alternatives. And try as I like, a small crack appears in my diplomacy dike.
Uh-oh.
By definition, I begin, alternative medicine, I continue, has either not been proved to work or been proved not to work. Do you know what they call alternative medicine that's been proved to work?
Medicine.
Medicine.
There you go.
So you don't believe in any natural remedies? On the contrary, Storm, actually, before we came to tea, I took a remedy derived from the bark of a willow tree. A painkiller that's virtually side effect free. It's got a weird name. Darling, what was it again? Masprin? Oh yeah, aspirin, which I paid about $1 for down at the local drugstore.
True.
The debate briefly abates as my...
Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of like interesting ways that I could take everything Tim has said so far. I heard this very interesting debate between Dr. Mike and Dr. K. Dr. Mike is I think, Western doctor. He's a YouTube channel, hugely popular. And Dr. K is also a YouTuber. He, I think, practiced a lot of Eastern medicine and learned about Ayurveda, another kind of practice in medicine from India. And they take two different approaches to treating patients, to diagnosing issues, and a lot of Western doctors in medicine have this belief that Ayurveda itself is not proven because there haven't been studies done to conduct the things that they're doing. There's not enough external validity to a lot of the claims being made in Ayurveda. And in some senses, those points are true, but then also the way Ayurveda is practiced and the way doctors implement it there, they also take a different approach. So it's almost like, doctors in India are practicing, 4 + 5 = 9, and doctors in the West are practicing blue plus white equals light blue, something like that. So it's not that they're being illogical in what they're doing. It's just they're in two different worldviews trying to eventually get some kind of outcome. That may have been a bad analogy, but the point still stands. There are differences in the way medicine is treated and how we understand evidence across cultures. So Indian doctors may be looking for different things, treating similar conditions, but arriving at those treatments in different ways. So I think it's weird that the person in this dinner story is positing that, let's say Ayurveda is the only possible way or the preferred way. And it should be probably a mixture of both. There should be some cross-cultural collaboration and more studies done across the board to understand what is best overall, what things work for the general population, what things may work for only small segments of the population. I think to completely bandwagon one position or the other is very reductive and just not constructive overall. Anyways, rant aside, let's get back to this.
Which I paid about $1 for down at the local drugstore. The debate briefly abates as my hosts collect plates. But when they return with desserts, Storm pertly asserts, Shakespeare said it first. There are more things in heaven and earth than exist in your philosophy. Science is just how we're trained to look at reality. It doesn't explain love or spirituality. How does science explain psychics, auras, the afterlife, the power of prayer?
The psychics and auras thing is a little questionable.
Becoming aware that I'm staring. I'm like a rabbit suddenly trapped in the blinding headlights of...
Also, science is meant to help explore those questions we don't have answers to in a productive way. Just because science doesn't have an answer at the current moment doesn't mean seeking information through science wouldn't lead you to a potential explanation or an alternative mechanism to an existing theory. It's just so foolish. It's so foolish. Hey, quick interruption. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd like to request a reaction yourself, hit the link down below. Now back to the video.
That I'm staring. I'm like a rabbit suddenly trapped in the blinding headlights of vacuous crap. Maybe it's the Hamlet she just misquaffed, or the 6th glass of wine I just quaffed, but my diplomacy dike groans, and the asshole held back by its stones can be held back no more.
What is diplomacy
Storm,
dike?
Sorry, I don't mean to bore you, but there's no such thing as an aura. Reading auras is like reading minds, or tea leaves, or star signs, or meridian lines. These people aren't applying a skill. They're either lying or mentally ill. Same goes for people who claim to hear God's demands, and spiritual healers who think they've got magic hands. By the way, why do we think it's okay for people to pretend they can talk to the dead? Isn't that totally fucked in the head, lying to some crying woman whose child has died and telling you you're in touch with the other side? I think that is fundamentally sick. Do we need to clarify here that there's no such thing as a psychic? What are we...
I read a story or saw a YouTube video, probably saw the YouTube video one. This woman claiming to be a psychic said that this person, this like picture of a child who had gone missing many years ago, is dead and whatever. The woman interviewing the psychic was the girl in the picture. I mean, it should be obvious that many psychics are lying. I don't know why one would go into any profession and just have the intention to lie. Pathological liars are problematic, I think, across the board.
That is fundamentally sick. Do we need to clarify here that there's no such thing as a psychic? What are we, fucking two? Do we actually think that Horton heard a who? Do we still believe that Santa brings us gifts, that Michael Jackson didn't have facelifts? Are we still so stunned by circus tricks that we think the dead would want to talk to pricks like John Edward? Storm, to her credit, despite my derision, keeps firing off cliches with startling precision, like a sniper using bollocks for ammunition.
Right. They're so good at being exactly wrong. It's hilarious.
You're so sure of your position, but you're just closed-minded. I think you'll find that your faith in science and tests is just as blind as the faith of any fundamentalist.
So defeat your own
That's a
argument?
good point. Let me think for a bit. Oh wait, my mistake, that's
Why would she claim that if she literally has to posit that science is built on faith and then says, so because yours is faith and mine is faith, nothing is different? That's actually an argument against her position. People need to understand logic too.
Wow, that's a good point. Let me think for a bit. Oh wait, my mistake, that's absolute bullshit. Science adjusts its views based on what's observed. Faith is the denial of observation so that belief can be preserved. If you show me that, say, homeopathy works, then I will change my mind. I will spin on a fucking dime. I'll be as embarrassed as hell, but I will run through the streets yelling, "It's a miracle! Take physics and bin it! Water has memory, and whilst its memory of a long-lost drop of onion juice seems infinite, it somehow forgets all the poo it's had in it. You show me that it works and how it works, and when I've recovered from the shock, I will take a compass and carve fancy that on the side of my cock."
I wouldn't do
Everyone
that.
is just staring now, but I'm pretty pissed and I've dug this far down, so I feel...
It's like hilarious that you have to, I guess, vouch for having an open mind and rooting your beliefs in the evidence that we have to observe. And this kind of harkens back to my reaction to Thank You God, where I pointed out that the reason I think a lot of people, religious and atheist, for example, have differences is because people have a very different view on the word evidence. I think religious people, and I'm just restating what I said previously, so you can skip ahead a little bit if you've already heard me say this, but I think a lot of devout religious people who, are maybe too fanatical, they have this belief that a lot of evidence can be spiritual evidence, and they've observed that spiritual evidence. And those who don't believe that, they say, we haven't observed that spiritual evidence, and therefore we can't qualify it as evidence because it's unobserved. So because they feel like they've observed it and that it is evidence for, the spiritual evidence, and that evidence is unobserved to the other side, it's like you're at this impasse and you just have to go based on straight belief. Whereas, the theists may say, well, there's no belief in it because the evidence is there. So that's one segment of the theists. The other segment of the theists acknowledge that they don't actually have evidence and they just ride on the belief itself. Depends on who you are, but I tend to lean on, like justify your existing beliefs with things rooted in reality and experiential generational evidence. And there's a number of things you can do before going to some higher power that still can have value to some. I'm not saying a complete denial, but I don't get it. Don't be so illogical is my point.
My cock. Everyone's just staring now, but I'm pretty pissed and I've dug this far down, so I figure, in for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah, run it down.
Life is full of mysteries, yeah, but there are answers out there and they won't be found by people sitting around looking serious and saying, isn't life mysterious?
Right.
Let's sit here and hope. Let's call up the fucking Pope. Let's go watch Oprah interview Deepak Chopra. If you want to watch telly, you should watch Scooby-Doo. That show was so cool because every time there was a church with a ghoul or a ghost in a school, they looked beneath the mask and what was inside? Oh, fucking janitor or the dude who ran the water slide. Because throughout history, every mystery ever solved has turned out to be not magic.
Yeah, I used to watch paranormal videos all the time on YouTube, and I always had that suspicion that, okay, these are probably just done for views, or there may be something that's in the video that is, curious, it's questionable. We don't understand right away what the reason for that speck of dust floating across your camera, what that was in the moment. But invariably, the video quality is bad. There's just not enough supporting evidence to show that the ghosts are real. I really want to see just a legit video of a ghost. So send those in the recommendations you guys do. There's also, this is a separate point now, but a scientific institute offering a $1 million cash prize to any psychic or person who believes to have access to paranormal powers or spiritual energy, whatever. And if you can prove that you do under whatever scientific regulations they have to run the experiment properly and verify that what you're doing is legit. If you can actually do it under all those conditions, you'll be given the $1 million. Guess what? Not a single person has been able to win that $1 million. Just saying.
Has turned out to be not magic. Does the idea that there might be knowledge frighten you? Does the idea that one afternoon on Wikipedia might enlighten you frighten you? Does the notion that there might not be a supernatural so blow your hippie noodle that you'd rather just stand in the fog of your inability to Google? Isn't this enough?
This also applies to one's understanding of philosophy, of politics, of composition, of art. If you just don't spend the time to learn, you're going to believe anything because you have no knowledge base to base any of your existing beliefs off of. You're permanently in conspiracy theory land.
Google? Isn't this enough? Just this world? Just
Human
this
experience.
Beautiful, complex, wonderfully unfathomable natural world? How does it so fail to hold our attention that we have to diminish it with the invention of cheap man-made myths and monsters? If you're so into your Shakespeare...
I think there is value in myth and narrative, and it doesn't have to be completely fictitious. So much of the art that we consume is based on reality, based on true events, based on real stories by real people. I'm not going to get into is Jesus real, that whole thing. But if there's a question mark, and maybe several question marks about any of the realities of the stories that are told about religion, for example, it just makes a lot more practical sense to tell stories about not fantastical individuals who could be subject to scrutiny, but to real examples in maybe the current life you exist within, or a generation removed, 2 generations removed. I think it's just a stronger rhetorical strategy, more effective in that way, but, I digress.
Myths and monsters. If you're so into your Shakespeare, lend me your ear. To gild refined gold, to paint the lily, to throw perfume on the violet is just fucking silly. Or something like that. Or what about Satchmo? I'll see trees of green, red roses too. And fine,
Louis.
if you wish to glorify Krishna and Vishnu in a post-colonial, condescending, bottled up and labelled kind of way, then whatever, that's okay. But here's what gives me a hard on. I am a tiny, insignificant, ignorant bit of carbon. I have one life, and it is short and unimportant, but thanks to recent scientific advances, I get to live twice as long as my great...
See, I totally get being a cynic and wanting to position yourself in a way that grounds yourself in the large cosmos and reality that we exist within, but I would never go as to say that my significance itself is small. I think you always have a large significance because you don't have to look at things in that reductive of a sense. The impact I have on the people around me will be felt. It will persist across time indefinitely and invariably. So I don't have a small impact. It's just the way you view things. I think perspective is a huge game changer when it comes to a lot of these things. So I agree with most of what Tim is saying. Sometimes I have a little bit of my own pushbacks or reframings, if you will. I think my point here is more of a reframing. But I think it is important to view yourself as a significant individual, even if you are, relatively speaking, small in terms of let's say, an arena full of people, but you still matter.
Great.
Not that he's saying you don't matter, but, that's my point.
Scientific advances, I get to live twice as long as my great uncles and aunts. Twice as long.
He's getting drunk.
To live this life of mine. Twice as long to love this wife of mine. Twice as many years of friends and wine, of sharing curries and getting shitty at good-looking hippies with fairies on their spines and butterflies on their titties.
I got the butterfly tat.
And if perchance I have offended,
perchance,
think but this and all is mended. We'd as well be 10 minutes back in time for all the chance you'll change your mind.
I love the irony of all of this is that the hippie's name is Storm, and it's the calm before the storm, right? Tim was calm before he met Storm, and then the moment he met her and then she started spouting off, he lost his mind, and then the actual storm unfurled. I've seen this happen in real time, watching people just completely lose their minds at a dinner party on, whatever issue it may be. And I do get it, because things are important to discuss, and we have to through those conversations, hopefully, I guess, reach some mutual understanding. I don't like it when people position themselves in a way that it's basically you have a need to be right or a need to disprove the other side. Now, it's important to, if you think you are right, to explain why and have humility in doing so. And that being said, if your agenda is just to be right at the end of the conversation, I think regardless of being actually in the right position or not, it comes off as a little bit problematic. That's why, in these situations, it's the wife who's thinking oh my God, he's making this situation socially untenable, because we could have just been sitting here agreeing to disagree, but now we're potentially being emotionally reactive out of a need to be right and position yourself as morally superior. Now, I'm not making a claim as to is he literally right or wrong, but it's just the mechanics of how you would navigate a social situation. Now, when it comes to Storm and the perspectives that the various storms of the world carry, the way I think about it is many people just have a different perspective, often coming from either lack of knowledge, ignorance, or matter of factly, they just don't care, or in another sense, are just not as intelligent as you are. Now, there's several caveats to all of those statements I just made, but if somebody is legitimately stupid and cannot handle a deep conversation about science, let's say, does it make sense to continue having that conversation and pushing your agenda down on that person? And I'm trying to abstract away a little bit from the storm reaction here today. I'm just talking generally. If you are talking to somebody who's incapable of having the conversation, after your efforts and after you've at least explained in a calm demeanor what your position is, what you think and understand of theirs, and can you reconcile anything, if you've reached that impasse, pushing past it feels just a little bit unproductive and magnifies other issues that you may have internally with your inability to just let things be. Because it could be fine that we agree to disagree and you just know that I'm never going to get along with Storm. So that's why I think even in the end, he reined it back and he's like, to hopefully mend the situation, let's leave it at that. You didn't have to go down the long path, because I think at a certain point they just don't understand you or stop listening or view you as lesser than. And I'm going to repeat a certain set of points here and then I'll end the reaction. But when it comes to just having conversation, there's a lot of content that I consume on YouTube, online, and media, and politics, whatever it may be. And some of the most competent individuals in terms of actual factual knowledge, they have the right facts, but they deliver their information narratively in a wrong way or emotionally in a triggering and problematic way, such that the other side listening to these factual points, those factual points being couched in, let's just call it shit, they don't have any real reason to believe the other individual, because they're couching all of this information with stuff that doesn't help the situation. It's very hard to remain superly morally superior on the high road, handle every conversation as maturely as humanly possible. I think we should all strive towards that, though, and push the needle in a direction of having more meaningful conversations overall. Yeah, second long rant over. Hope you all enjoyed my reaction. Subscribe if you did, and if you would like to request more reactions from me in the future, hit the link in the description box down below. And as always, my friends, have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care and peace.